The Pride of Earth sliced through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek hull gleaming beneath distant stars. A symbol of humanity's growing influence in a galaxy filled with alien civilizations, the warship was on a routine mission. Scouting. A resource-rich planet on the edge of an uncharted sector. The mission seemed simple enough, nothing the experienced crew couldn't handle. But they were about to learn that the universe had a way of throwing the unexpected their way, especially when they least anticipated it. The Iridrax, a feared, alien species, had been watching the humans for months, observing their growth and technology, dismissing them as nothing more than a fleeting nuisance. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and humanity's rapid expansion was just another blip on the radar. The Iridrax believed themselves to be untouchable, and the humans were about to prove them wrong. It started with a sudden surge of energy on the ship's radar. The Pride of Earth had drifted too close to Iridrax space, and without warning, an entire fleet of enemy ships emerged from the shadows of nearby asteroids. The Iridrax attacked swiftly, their ships a blur of advanced technology, their weapons faster and more lethal than anything the humans had encountered. The crew of the Pride of Earth scrambled into action, alarms blaring as enemy ships swarmed around them, launching a barrage of firepower that shook the warship. Captain Alyssa Ward, a seasoned leader with nerves of steel, barked orders to her crew, her voice steady despite the chaos. The humans were outgunned, outclassed, and in a desperate fight for survival. But what the Iridrax didn't account for was humanity's greatest strength, their unwillingness to back down. The Pride of Earth's guns returned fire, their energy shields flickering but holding strong as the crew worked with precision and unity. Every human aboard the ship understood the gravity of the situation. If they didn't survive this, the warship would be nothing more than a pile of scrap, floating in the vast void of space. They fired back with everything they had, using clever tactics and out-of-the-box thinking to counter the Iridrax's superior technology. In the midst of the chaos, Lieutenant James Tarkin, a young officer with a sharp mind, found a weakness in the enemy's formations. He quickly passed the intel to the captain. With little time to think, Captain Ward made a risky decision to break formation and split the Pride of Earth's fleet into smaller groups, hoping to confuse the Iridrax long enough to land a critical strike. It was a dangerous move, one that could have easily backfired, but it paid off. The Iridrax fleet, expecting humanity to fold under pressure, was caught off guard. The human warship's agile maneuvers allowed it to pick off one enemy ship after another, creating an opening for a powerful counterstrike. Slowly but surely, the humans turned the tide of the battle. Iridrax ships, once certain of victory, were being forced to retreat in disarray. The humans weren't just holding their ground, they were pushing the Iridrax back, forcing them to reconsider their arrogance. The battle was hard fought, and the damage to the Pride of Earth was significant, but in the end, the human crew emerged victorious. They had done the impossible. They had not only survived, but had struck a devastating blow to the Iridrax fleet. However, this victory came at a price. As the battle ended and the Iridrax ships retreated, the humans breathed a sigh of relief. But that relief was short-lived. Unknown to the crew, the Iridrax leadership was watching from afar, seething with anger and disbelief. They had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them dearly. Their pride was shattered, and they vowed revenge. The Iridrax had a weapon they had never needed to use. A weapon so powerful that it could wipe out entire planets with a single strike. It was called the Titan-class Leviathan ship. The Iridrax had been building it in secret for years. A vessel of unimaginable power, designed specifically for situations like this. They would bring it to bear against humanity, not just to avenge their loss, but to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Underestimating the Iridrax was a fatal mistake. As the Pride of Earth limped back to Earth, unaware of the looming threat, the Iridrax prepared their revenge. The war was far from over, and the galaxy would soon witness the full extent of humanity's defiance. What the Iridrax didn't realize, however, was that humanity had a habit of fighting back, no matter how impossible the odds. The command center of Earth's United Galactic Defense Council was a bustling hub of activity, its vast screens flashing, with constant streams of data, communications, and strategic updates. The battle against the Iridrax had been brutal, but the humans had emerged victorious, against all odds. Across the galaxy, Earth's leadership celebrated the success of the pride of Earth and its crew, who had proven humanity's resilience and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming alien power. Yet, as the celebrations took place, a dark shadow loomed unseen. The Iridrax had not forgotten their defeat. They had been humiliated, their superiority shattered in a single battle. In the darkest corners of their fleet, the Iridrax began working on something far worse than anyone could imagine. A weapon so powerful that it could end humanity's rise in the stars before it had even truly begun. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was filled with an eerie sense of calm, with people enjoying the moment of victory. But deep inside the command center, the leaders of Earth were already working to prepare for the unknown. Intelligence reports began to surface, in fragments, chilling details of an advanced weapon being built by the Iridrax, one that could decimate entire fleets in mere moments. These reports were alarming but vague, leaving Earth's command structure on edge. The Iridrax were constructing a ship unlike any humanity had ever seen, a colossal battleship that could render anything in its path to ashes. The Titan class Leviathan ship was not just a vessel. It was a symbol of the Iridrax's pride and their desire for revenge. It was a weapon meant to crush humanity in a single devastating blow. Commander Alyssa Ward stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes focused on the area near Iridrax space. She had been in the trenches, leading her crew through the heart of battle, and now, with the looming threat of the Leviathan, she was more determined than ever. The news was dire. Time was running out. The Leviathan was nearing completion, and soon it would be ready to unleash its wrath on Earth. Humanity's response had to be swift and decisive, but they had only one shot at survival. If the Iridrax succeeded in their mission, it could spell the end of Earth's presence in the galaxy. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt and innovate. Working tirelessly alongside engineers, scientists, and strategists, Ward's team had been developing a secret weapon of their own, the Nova-class starfighter. Powered by a new and revolutionary energy source, the Nova-class would allow humans to fight back with the firepower and agility needed to take on the Iridrax. It wasn't ready yet, but Ward had one hope. It might be enough to turn the tide of the war, if they could get it operational in time. As the Earth fleet rallied, Ward's team dug deeper into the intelligence they had gathered, hoping to find a weakness in the Leviathan. Then, in a twist of fate, a breakthrough came. A defect in the construction plans was uncovered, a flaw in the Leviathan's design, something that the Iridrax had overlooked. Certain key areas of the ship, though highly fortified, were still vulnerable. A direct assault on these weak points could potentially cripple the massive battleship, rendering it useless before it could unleash its full power. The discovery was a double-edged sword, however. Striking early could give humanity a chance to stop the Leviathan before it fully formed into the unstoppable force the Iridrax intended it to be. But taking action now would mean risking a premature confrontation without the full readiness of Earth's forces. Ward weighed the options carefully. Timing was everything. The Iridrax, relentless in their thirst for revenge, were closing in on their target, Earth. The Leviathan was nearing the final stages of its construction, and soon it would be ready to tear through human defenses. Commander Ward knew that every second counted. The clock was ticking, and the decision would have to be made. Strike early and risk the lives of her people, or wait for the perfect opportunity, knowing that the Leviathan could be mere days away from launch. As the tension mounted, Ward's mind raced with strategy. Her team could delay the Leviathan's arrival, but only if they acted fast and made the most of the vulnerabilities they had uncovered. If they struck too soon, it might not be enough. If they waited too long, the Leviathan would be ready to crush them with its full might. The fate of Earth rested on this one moment, and Ward had to make the call. The storm was coming, and humanity's survival would depend on whether they could outthink their enemy and strike before the Iridrax unleashed their vengeance. The Leviathan loomed in the distance, a dark, towering shadow slowly creeping into Earth's orbit. Its sheer size was enough to send chills through anyone who laid eyes on it. Built to annihilate, the Leviathan was the pinnacle of Iridrax engineering. Its weapons capable of vaporizing entire cities, its armor thick enough to withstand the might of entire fleets. As it advanced toward Earth, the Iridrax fleet, a swarm of deadly ships, followed closely behind. The Iridrax launched their assault with terrifying precision, targeting human colonies across the outer rim. They struck quickly, overwhelming civilian defenses with their overwhelming firepower. The humans, it seemed, were no match for such a colossal force. But as the Iridrax expected mass panic, they were met with something unexpected: resistance. The humans were not running in fear. They were fighting back. On every battlefield, humanity showed their tenacity. Earth's military, under Commander Alyssa Ward's leadership, had prepared for this day. Despite being outgunned and outnumbered, humanity fought like never before. Ships darted between asteroids, using the rugged terrain to their advantage, while others employed guerrilla tactics, striking from unexpected angles. Humanity's ingenuity came into play. Their ships may have been smaller, but they were faster, more agile, and equipped with new technologies developed in secret. The humans weren't just defending. They were fighting back, striking at Iridrax ships and forcing them to retreat into the blackness of space, only to strike again. Amidst the chaos, Commander Ward knew that this was their chance to hurt the Iridrax before their full power could be unleashed. A daring raid was planned to target an Iridrax supply ship, a vital node for the fleet's continued assault on Earth. Ward, ever the strategist, led a small group of elite soldiers and pilots on a high-risk mission. They infiltrated the heart of the Iridrax supply chain, a sleek, heavily guarded vessel that, if taken down, would cripple the enemy's ability to launch further attacks. The raid was quick, surgical, and deadly. The humans struck from the shadows, their attack precise and fast. In the end, they succeeded, taking down the supply ship and crippling Iridrax logistics, forcing the Iridrax to rethink their strategy. But Ward knew this victory, though significant, was only a temporary respite. The Leviathan remained an overwhelming force, its guns capable of turning entire cities into dust. Earth's colonies were battered and bruised, but the fight had only just begun. As the Iridrax unleashed the full force of their advanced fleet, humanity's resistance grew fiercer. The humans had no intention of surrendering. They had already fought too hard to give up now. Every spaceport, every colony, every ship became a battlefield. Despite the overwhelming might of the Leviathan, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The Iridrax were starting to realize something they hadn't anticipated. The humans, unlike any species they had encountered before, were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future, and that made all the difference. The Iridrax had always viewed the galaxy through the lens of dominance. They believed that might made right, and that any race who dared defy them would inevitably be crushed beneath the weight of their power. But now, with every failed assault, with every human ship that managed to escape or retaliate, they began to understand that this war was different. The Leviathan could destroy cities, but it couldn't destroy the will of an entire species. The humans had learned quickly. They adapted, innovated, and fought back. And it wasn't just about revenge anymore. For the Iridrax, it was about more than asserting their dominance. It was now about survival. The humans weren't just resisting, they were turning the tide. The Leviathan, despite its destructive power, was not invincible. And every Iridrax commander that had underestimated humanity now found themselves facing an opponent they could not easily defeat. As the Iridrax pressed forward, the battles raged on. Commander Ward's leadership, coupled with the relentless determination of humanity, continued to chip away at the invincible facade the Iridrax had built. The humans had become a force to be reckoned with. With each passing day, the Iridrax were forced to confront the reality that this conflict was no longer about proving superiority. It was about facing the unyielding spirit of a species determined to protect its home and its future. The reckoning had begun, and there was no turning back. The battle above Earth raged with no end in sight, as the relentless Leviathan and its fleet hammered humanity's defenses with devastating force. Commander Alyssa Ward stood at the center of the United Galactic Defense Council's command station, her face grim as she watched the screen flicker with reports of losses. Earth's military, though brave, was faltering under the unyielding power of the Iridrax. The Leviathan had become an unstoppable juggernaut, and Earth's colonies were on the brink of collapse. It was clear that without a drastic, decisive move, humanity would lose everything. Desperation hung heavy in the air. Commander Ward, ever the strategist, felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She knew what had to be done, but the risk was monumental. It was time for humanity's ultimate gambit. The Nova-class starfighter, still in its final testing phase, was humanity's last hope. A ship unlike anything the Iridrax had encountered, powered by a new energy source that could rival the Leviathan's overwhelming firepower, the Nova-class had the potential to turn the tide of the war. But it came with its own set of problems. The ship's primary mission was clear: infiltrate the Leviathan, exploit its vulnerabilities, and plant an energy charge deep within its core. The blast, if successful, would disable the colossal warship for good. But there was a catch. Once the Nova-class fighters entered the Leviathan's defenses, they would be trapped. The Iridrax ship was a fortress, and there would be no escape. This wasn't just a risky move, it was a suicide mission. Ward, knowing the stakes, rallied her forces. A small squadron of elite pilots, known as the Ghost Squadron, volunteered for the mission. These men and women, skilled beyond measure, had no illusions about the odds stacked against them. They knew this would be their final flight, but they also knew that without this desperate strike, humanity would be doomed. As the Ghost Squadron prepared for their mission, Commander Ward offered a few final words to her team, her voice steady but filled with the weight of what lay ahead. This is it. We either take the Leviathan down now, or we lose everything. The future of our species depends on us. Make it count. As the squadron launched from Earth's outer defense station, they entered the void of Iridrax space, heading straight toward the massive silhouette of the Leviathan. The odds were stacked impossibly high. The Iridrax would stop at nothing to protect their prized ship. As they approached, the squadron encountered waves of Iridrax fighters, each one fiercer than the last. The battle in space was like nothing the humans had ever faced before. The Iridrax warriors were relentless, fighting with an intensity that spoke of their desperation and pride. But the Ghost Squadron, though outnumbered, was determined. They danced through the enemy lines, their ships cutting through space with expert precision, using every trick they knew to stay alive. Inside the Leviathan, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The human pilots fought through the gauntlet of enemy fire, determined to reach their target. Commander Ward's plan hinged on timing. If they didn't disable the ship's defenses at the right moment, they would be wiped out before they could do any real damage. The clock was ticking. As they neared the heart of the Leviathan, the energy from the Nova-class starfighters began to surge, preparing for the final assault. The energy charge was set to overload the ship's core, but even as the pilots neared the final step, They knew the risks were greater than ever. Back on Earth, the battle above the planet continued. Humanity's fleet fought with everything they had, holding off wave after wave of Iridrax ships, trying to buy time for the Ghost Squadron's mission. The fighting was brutal, and Earth's fleet was slowly being whittled down. But every human pilot, every soldier fought with a fierce determination. They were defending their world, their families, their future. The spirit of humanity was unbreakable, and it fueled them in their darkest hour. The battle was coming to a head. As the Ghost Squadron approached their target, the final showdown with the Iridrax was inevitable. With their ships surrounded, they had only one chance left to strike. Make it through the enemy lines, plant the charge, and cripple the Leviathan for good. It was a mission no one would return from, but they fought on, driven by the belief that humanity's survival depended on them. The future of the human race lay in the hands of a small group of pilots, willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to change the course of the war. The time for hesitation had passed. It was, now or never. The Leviathan was a fortress, its interior a maze of dark metallic corridors, thick with the stench of cold steel and the hum of advanced machinery. Inside, the Ghost Squadron pushed forward, the tension hanging thick in the air. Every step felt like it could be their last as they moved cautiously, taking down Iridrax soldiers who stood in their way, expertly navigating through traps designed to kill with brutal efficiency. Commander Alyssa Ward, at the forefront, led her squadron with steely resolve, every step driven by a singular purpose: to end this war, no matter the cost. Her heart pounded with the weight of the mission, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. Earth's survival, the survival of every person she had ever known, rested on what they were about to do. This was the final act, the one that would either save humanity or lead to their complete annihilation. As they reached the heart of the Leviathan, the Ghost Squadron fought through a final wave of Iridrax warriors, each encounter more intense than the last. Finally, they reached the core, an immense chamber glowing with eerie, pulsating energy. Ward's hands shook only slightly as she placed the energy charge deep into the ship's systems, setting the timer with a grim finality. The countdown began. 10 minutes. That was all they had. The squadron quickly turned to make their escape, knowing the Leviathan would soon be no more. But just as they began to retreat, the door slammed shut behind them. A shrill alarm blared, signaling that they were not alone. The Iridrax were ready for them. A sudden, brutal counterattack came from all sides. The Iridrax forces, more ruthless than ever, swarmed the squadron. Gunfire echoed off the walls as humans fought with everything they had left. In the chaos, Ward was separated from the others, and before she could react, she was seized by a massive Iridrax warrior. Held captive in the heart of the enemy ship, the commander found herself face to face with the Iridrax leader, the one who had orchestrated the invasion, the one who had underestimated humanity at every turn. The leader sneered at her, confident that humanity's spirit had finally been broken. "You're just an insignificant blip in the galaxy. This is where your species ends," the Iridrax leader taunted. Ward, battered but unbroken, looked him in the eye, her voice calm, even in the face of certain death. "You attacked the wrong species," she said, her words cutting through the silence of the room. "We're not like the others. We've faced extinction before and always risen from the ashes. We don't surrender. We fight, we adapt, and we survive. You may have the power to destroy, but you'll never break us." The leader's sneer faltered for just a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. But it was too late. With a defiant smile, Ward reached into her uniform and activated the charge. The Leviathan shuddered, its massive engines shaking as the energy surged. The leader's eyes widened in disbelief. In that final moment, before the ship erupted into flames, Ward spoke her final words, broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. "We are humanity. You attacked the wrong species." The explosion that followed was nothing short of cataclysmic. The Leviathan erupted in a violent blast of energy that ripped through the heart of the Iridrax fleet. The shockwave obliterated enemy ships, sending debris scattering across space. The Leviathan itself was reduced to rubble, its once imposing form nothing more than a drifting wreck. Iridrax forces, unprepared for such a devastating blow, were thrown into disarray. Their once impenetrable war machine was now nothing but a shattered shell. In the wake of the explosion, silence fell over the battlefield. The Iridrax, stunned and broken, had been defeated, not by superior firepower, but by the indomitable will of humanity. The humans had faced the brink of extinction, and in that moment, they proved their worth. The Iridrax had underestimated them. They had attacked a species that had always found a way to survive, to fight, to rise again. As the dust settled, and the remnants of the Iridrax fleet drifted aimlessly through space, the galaxy would remember the sacrifice made by Commander Ward and the Ghost Squadron. They had given everything to save humanity, to show the galaxy that there was no power in existence that could break the human spirit. The war was over, and humanity had won. And as the final echoes of the explosion faded into space, Commander Ward's voice carried across the stars, a reminder to all: "We are humanity. You attacked the wrong species.